Hello, and welcome to Channel Zero TV with John and John. I'm John,
And I'm John.
and after a bit of a hiatus that included our first live performance in close to 2 years, we're back for another Channel Zero TV YouTube broadcast covering one of our old favorites, the Twonky. 1954, maybe 1953. John, do you want to tell folks a little bit about the Twonky?
The Twonky stars Hans Conried. It was directed and written by radio innovator and pioneer Arch Obler, based on a short story by Henry Kuttner, co-written with his wife, Catherine Moore, back in the 1940s. And what the Twonky is a television set seemingly from the far-off future that does nothing but provide and give and control and keep docile whoever is its nominal owner. And its nominal owner here is, of course, Hans Conried, who's doing everything it is possible to get rid of it. And it's one of these, an ongoing genre in the 1950s of feature films with a definite anti-television slant.
So there was a bit of a political agenda going on. It's also sort of imaginative sci-fi story turned into a kind of sci-fi comedy. We'll be back after showing you the preview to talk about whether or not it worked.
How do you like that? No power, no area, then they blame it on the set. Stupid. Well, I'll connect up the new one. The boss says. Guy like him needs entertainment. His wife gone away. He's as lonesome as a hound dog locked out on a rainy day. Okay, baby. Out you go. What the? Hey. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Oh, Nellie! So, you want to wrestle, huh?
This is Robot 743B32 Experimental Model Series K72 reporting. Message for the Bureau of Entertainment. My client is lonely. Send over immediately one blonde female age 18 to 20.
Just hang off naturally. When I listen to this. Police. I'll call the police. I'll call the Vice Squad.
I understand this Twonky now. I've been telephoning my scientific friends. They tell me we already have robots in this world of ours. The only trouble is a superatomic brain like that one down there. Why, that one can think, reason, make its own choices, disguise itself. It can wriggle around under its own power. They tell me that the boys of science are centuries away from that.
Then it is from another world.
No, from our world, centuries in the future.
Well, how do you like that for a surprise?
You know, I just have one thing to say. The Twonky is Alexa. If Alexa worked as designed.
Well ahead of its time, except for the sort of little mobile feet, and it doesn't have to sort of levitate a rotary dial phone for Alexa to communicate with the wider world. But
I really want to put Alexa on like a 4-footed table that it can move around on, four mechanical legs. I think that would be the making of Alexa or Siri or Google Home or whatever.
And we're talking about a movie to a certain extent ahead of its time, since this was made in the mid 50s when, at the time, television was sort of public enemy number one for the movie studios and cinemas. I recall you would even get sort of signs at cinemas telling people to resist the television or not buy the television. I think there was policy to not depict people watching television in the movies for a while. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. As I said before, there was a whole sort of subgenre of anti-television movies throughout the 1950s. There was A Face in the Crowd, which was all about sort of the mass mesmerizing qualities of television. There was something called Champagne for Caesar with Vincent Price. It was all about there's something wrong with that television industry, whereas, of course, Hollywood is somehow the most virtuous place on God's earth.
Right, and just not to spoil the surprise. I hope you see the film, but this TV, as they surmised, was from some totalitarian future, and it goes about kind of catering to Hans Conrad's needs, but of course over time, making sure he doesn't drink too much coffee, doesn't listen to Mozart, replaces it with sort of ceremonial marches that the TV from the future thinks is more appropriate. And Conrad is a sort of tweedy college professor who is doing his best to sort of muddle through what is obviously has sci-fi elements, but is fundamentally a sort of sitcom situation.
Right. The Twonky is a representative of that imaginary like totalitarian future. This is a pretty constant concern from director writer Arch Obler, who cut his teeth back in the 1930s with an innovative radio show horror anthology called Lights Out. But he was very, very famous for being a classic premature anti-fascist. He was always writing radio plays about the evils of like totalitarianism and Nazism and things like that. And this is just sort of right in that continuum with him.
But he got on the wrong side of the studios, if I remember, for kind of slipping anti-fascist message into his radio programs, along with some genuine horror. I think there's, listeners might be familiar with a Simpsons episode about a sort of fog that turns you inside out, turns human beings inside out. That was based on another radio program. And was there something about a chicken heart that sort of engulfs the planet?
Oh yeah. He was trying to come up with like the silliest thing that he could make terrifying, and he just came up with this like vast protoplasmic mass of like a chicken heart that somehow grows to like planetary proportions and simply absorbs the human race. The guy was out there. Like Orson Welles, he tried to transition from radio into movies, although Welles, of course, managed to start in one of the majors, whereas Obler, was pretty much an independent, which is evidenced by the Twonky, which is, a somewhat low-budget project, but one with a lot of heart. It has a definite sort of, charm of its own, even though the special effects are somewhat subpar for the era.
And it's got Hans Conrad in it.
His first starring role, by the way.
Was it really? Okay.
Yeah, the Twonky.
I think of him as Professor Terwilliger in the 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T. Kind of shifted between sort of comic roles and villain roles, but very distinct and a distinct voice.
Oh yeah, well he had a whole side hustle doing voiceover work for animated cartoons. He worked with Jay Ward for a couple of years on something called Hoppity Hooper, which was sort of Rocky and Bullwinkle's impoverished cousin.
So yeah, no, he's got a real sort of screen presence, more so than the TV set. But I think getting back to the theme of the film, I mean, this was a very early attempt to sort of talk about the broadcast device in our home that is kind of a two-way street. Certainly, something that 1984 sort of fleshed out with a sort of telescreen. That combined with this sort of Obler's anti-totalitarianism, kind of projected into this sort of future society where this set allegedly came from. And there's something going on in what is otherwise a sort of low-budget sci-fi comedy.
Oh yeah, like I said, this is Siri, this is Alexa, this is Google Homes. I mean,
Mhm.
this is what they're trying to work towards. The Twonky is what they're trying to create. They haven't done it yet, but they do want something that will, cater to your needs you haven't even thought of yet. I mean, that's sort of the goal here whenever we talk about artificial intelligence. But of course, the Twonky is also an agent of control. He's your friendly neighborhood, secret policeman right there in the corner of your living room.
Right. Yeah. No, Alexa will have to be built into something with the Twonky's chassis if it's ever to kind of reach its full potential.
Yes, indeed.
Anyway, glad you were able to join us again for another episode of Channel Zero TV. We're continuing on, even though we're also back doing live performances at the Somerville Theater. We'll be back in a few months' time. We'll have announcements on that later. But till the next time, thanks for joining us. I'm John.
And I'm John.
Catch you next time on Channel Zero TV.